After 7 years of marriage, I found out my husband married me for a bet. Now, I'm thriving, helping others find real love, while he's left behind in the dust. I thought my marriage was perfect, I really did. We were that couple, you know, the kind everyone looked at and thought, they've got it all figured out. We had the house, the vacations, the matching holiday cards, the perfect life. I trusted him, I trusted us, I loved him. He loved me, or so I thought. Then one night, I found it, a notebook, tucked under the couch cushions like it was no big deal. I didn't even mean to pick it up, but I did. I opened it, and everything shattered, there, in his handwriting, was something I'd never expected to see, a bet, a bet. I stared at it for a long time, thinking I was crazy. This couldn't be real. I mean, who would do that? Who uses someone as part of a stupid, cruel game? But it wasn't just a line, it wasn't just a note, it was a whole plan. He'd written about the bet to marry me, how long it would take, how he'd win me over, and how easy it would be, and I was the prize. I remember staring at the page, my heart pounding in my chest. I kept reading. The more I read, the more everything we had felt like a lie, like a sick joke. I couldn't breathe. I had to put the notebook down. I had to walk away. But I didn't. I kept going. I needed to know more. And that's when it hit me. He'd never loved me, not like I thought. He never chose me. He didn't want me. He just wanted to win. It felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me, like my whole life, everything I thought was real, was just a game, a bet. The worst part? I was the fool in this game. I was the one who had been played. I had given him everything, my trust, my love, my future, and he had just been playing along. I felt sick, like my whole world had cracked open and I couldn't put it back together. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to do anything to make it stop hurting. But all I could do was stand there, frozen. I always thought we had it all. I mean, we were that couple everyone envied, right? The power couple, they'd talk about at parties, the ones who had it together. People looked at us, and they saw success. Mark and I had this rhythm, this unspoken understanding. It was easy. He was the charming, successful investment banker who knew just the right things to say at the right time. And me? Well, I was a corporate lawyer, working crazy hours, but I had the life I'd always dreamed of. We had the house, the vacations, the perfect dinners where everything looked right, too right, maybe. Now that I think about it, we made it a point to have our family dinners every Sunday. Mark was always so perfect, sitting at the table like the proud husband. That smile, it never wavered, like he'd practiced it in front of the mirror. And I was in love, so deeply, I guess I didn't see the cracks forming. It was like we were living a dream, at least, that's what I told myself. I mean, I wanted to believe it was perfect. I had to. It was easier to believe that he was my soulmate, that we were meant to be, than to think about the alternative. The life we built was a picture that looked so good, you could hang it in a gallery, and sometimes, I'd catch myself, just looking at him, and thinking, I'm so lucky to have him. There were moments when I felt like we were untouchable, like the universe had somehow picked us out of the millions of other people, just to give us this. I remember this one trip we took to Greece, the blue sky, the golden sun, the food, everything was perfect. We spent our days exploring the islands, our nights in little cafes with candlelight flickering on the tables. Mark would always joke about how I had to hold my breath when we climbed the hills, and I'd laugh because I knew, deep down, he wasn't just talking about the climb. He'd look at me, and there was this spark, this warmth, like he was proud of me. And I thought, God, I love him. There were days when it felt like nothing in the world could touch us. We were that couple who had it all, who got the career, the perfect home, the vacations, the flawless public image. We weren't just partners, we were a team. We could handle anything, and I thought, I'm the luckiest woman alive. But, you know, when I look back, I realize I was so wrapped up in the illusion of it all that I couldn't see the truth. The one thing that should have been real, the trust between us, was the thing that was fake. Mark was good at what he did. He was good at pretending, at making me feel like I was the most important thing in his world, and maybe, for a while, I was. But what I didn't know then, what I didn't want to believe, was that I wasn't the only one he was playing. He was playing everyone. I think about all those moments I thought were ours. The quiet mornings when we'd sit on the couch. Him with his coffee, me with my work papers spread out. He'd touch my hand, just like a reminder that we were fine, that we were good. But maybe he wasn't thinking about me in those moments. Maybe he was just trying to convince himself We even had these inside jokes that made us feel like we were this little world of our own. I swear, Mark could make me laugh in the most random moments, like when we'd be stuck in traffic and he'd pretend to be some ridiculous character, or when he'd try to teach me how to cook a dish, and I'd always screw it up, and he'd just smile and say, "We'll get it next time." But the truth? It wasn't next time, it was just the same thing, over and over, until there was nothing left, and I didn't even see it coming, not a single warning, not a single flag waving in my face, telling me, hey, something's wrong. I mean, I had every reason to trust him, right? We had this life everyone envied, and I was just grateful, but now, I can't help but wonder if all those moments were just part of the act. Like he was playing a role, perfect husband, perfect partner, perfect life, and I was just the willing audience. I wish I could tell you that I knew, deep down, something wasn't right, that I had this gut feeling, some sort of intuitive flash that told me I needed to look closer, but I didn't. I wanted to believe that we were different, that we weren't like all the other couples who fell apart, that he loved me, and I wasn't just some pawn in a game he was playing. I thought I was living the dream, but it was a dream built on lies, a story I had told myself, over and over again, and I bought into it, just like everyone else. It's funny, isn't it? How you can be so sure of something, so certain that it's real, until one day you wake up, and everything you thought you knew is shattered, like waking up from a beautiful dream only to realize it wasn't real at all. And that's where I was, standing on the other side of this perfect life we had, looking at everything with new eyes, the vacations, the dinners, the laughter, the moments I thought we shared. They all felt empty now. It was all a lie. But here's the thing, the worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself, it wasn't even that he played me. The worst part was realizing that I had let myself believe in something that wasn't true, that I had ignored the parts of myself that told me to question, to look deeper. But I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe I had built my life on a lie. Now, I have to learn how to rebuild from the rubble. I remember it so clearly, the night everything fell apart. It was a Saturday, quiet, too quiet. Mark had gone out to meet some friends, probably a business thing, though he never told me the details anymore. It had been a few weeks since I started feeling the distance between us, little things, the way he'd stop texting back during the day or how his business trips were always getting longer. I brushed it off. I mean, things like that don't just happen overnight, right? I told myself everything was fine, it was just a rough patch. But that night, something made me walk into his study, and I don't even know why. Maybe it was because I had that nagging feeling in my gut, you know, the one that tells you something's off but you can't put your finger on it. So, I went in, I opened the door, and there it was, the notebook. At first, I didn't think much of it. Mark had always been kind of organized. His office had that one corner where he kept his journals, his work notes, but this notebook, it was different. The cover was a little worn, like it had been flipped through a lot. The pages inside, filled with names, dates, and bets. I thought it was a joke at first. I don't know why, but I started flipping through it. I don't know if I was curious or just trying to distract myself, and then I saw it. My name, Elena, marry her, $10,000 bet, do it by the end of the year. My stomach dropped. I thought I was going to pass out. I mean, this couldn't be real. No, there was no way. Mark, the man I married, the man I thought was my soulmate, he couldn't have written this. He couldn't have seen our life as a game, couldn't have looked at me like some kind of challenge. But as I kept reading, I found more notes, details, his friends' names. They were all in on it. They had all made bets about how long it would take him to get me to marry him and who could get me to fall the hardest. They were keeping score, like it was some twisted competition. And then I found the worst part. The part that made my hands shake and the tears burn at the back of my eyes. It wasn't just some isolated thing. It was the plan. It was all part of the joke. Mark had never loved me. He had just played the part, and I was the prize. A bet. I sat down, still holding the notebook, my hands shaking. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't, because I had to understand this. I had to make sense of it. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that maybe I'd misread something, but the more I read, the more my world shattered. That notebook, it was everything. I tried to be rational. I closed it, stood up, walked around the room, looked at the things we'd built together, our house, our vacations, the pictures from our trips, the ones we hung up on the walls with our smiles and promises. How could I have been so blind? I remember standing there for what felt like hours, just staring at the notebook, trying to process what was happening. How had I not seen the signs? How had I believed all those stories he told me about his past, about the life he wanted to build with me? How had I let myself fall for him? I don't know if I was more angry or devastated in that moment. I remember calling Sophie, my best friend, in a daze. My hands were trembling, and I couldn't get the words out fast enough. Sophie, I found something. I found a notebook, a list of bets, and I'm on it. He married me for a bet. A bet. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. What are you talking about? She asked. I couldn't answer. How do you explain something like that to someone who's known you your whole life? How do you make them understand that the man you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with, the man you thought you knew better than anyone, was never real? Tell me what's going on, Elena. Calm down, breathe. I was falling apart. I didn't know where to put the pain. The worst part? It wasn't just the bet. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way Mark had done it so coldly, like I was a transaction, like our years together, our whole marriage, meant nothing. It was all part of the game. I knew something was wrong. I had felt it in my gut for weeks now, but this was the final blow. I wasn't just hurt, I was humiliated. My whole life, my whole identity, had been a lie, and he'd made me believe that I was enough. That I was worth something, that we were real. And I know what you're thinking, how could I not have seen it? How did I let it go on for so long? I don't know, maybe I was too naive, maybe I wanted to believe in a love that wasn't real, maybe I thought that just because he was good at pretending, I was supposed to believe the fantasy we'd created together. But the truth? The reality? It hit me hard, like a slap to the face, and I couldn't unsee it, I couldn't unlearn it, and there was no going back. I remember sitting there, staring at the notebook in my hands, feeling like the floor had just fallen out from under me. I wanted to burn it, rip it up, forget it, but deep down, I knew that wouldn't change anything. What was I supposed to do now? What was I supposed to say? How could I confront him about something so monstrous? I didn't know, and when he came home later that night, acting like everything was normal, I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the notebook in his face and demand answers. But all I could do was sit there, pretending like I didn't know. And the worst part? I couldn't even look at him anymore, because the man I thought I knew. He wasn't the man I had married. He was a stranger, a liar, a manipulator. The love I thought we had? It was all a joke, and now I had to decide what came next. Was I strong enough to walk away? Or would I stay in this lie forever? Honestly, I didn't know yet, but I would figure it out. Somehow, I would make it out of this, even if it felt like everything had just crumbled beneath me. I don't even know where to start, honestly. I didn't want to confront him. Part of me, maybe the naive part, maybe the part that wanted to believe in the fairy tale, hoped that if I just sat with it long enough, maybe it would go away, like it was some nightmare I could wake up from. But that notebook, that damned notebook, I could feel it in my gut, you know? The more I stared at it, the more I realized it was real. It wasn't just some cruel joke, some twisted thing I could laugh off. No, it was cold, hard truth, written in his hand. I didn't even need to turn the pages to know. I mean, I was at the top of the list, my name, Elena, and I couldn't breathe. I was shaking, but I knew I couldn't wait anymore. I had to know. I had to hear him say it. So, I marched into his study. He was on the phone, but I didn't care. I slammed the notebook down in front of him, like a gauntlet, like everything I had believed. It was now lying there, flat and ugly, in black and white. I can still hear his voice when he saw the notebook. He didn't even flinch, not a single blink, just a smile that felt like a victory. And that's when he said it. I never thought I'd get this far, but now you're stuck with me. I don't even know how to describe what I felt in that moment. It wasn't just hurt. It was like the whole world tilted on its axis. Like the ground under me just gave out. I couldn't even process what he was saying. Stuck with you? His smile was still there, like he had pulled off the most perfect con, like this was a game to him, a bet, like the damn notebook said. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I realized I didn't know him at all. You think I'm stuck with you? My voice cracked, raw, like I'd just been punched in the chest. It wasn't even anger at first, just disbelief, a deep, searing ache that spread across my whole body. My legs felt weak, my head was spinning. You used me, I whispered, barely able to force the words out. He leaned back in his chair, like he was watching me unravel, and honestly, that was the worst part, the way he looked at me, like I was something, some game piece, to be used and discarded. There was no apology in his eyes, no remorse, just this sick satisfaction. I didn't think it would last this long, he said, still so calm, so detached. But you got attached, didn't you? You really thought we had something real, that word. It broke me. I'd given him everything, my heart, my time, my trust, and he treated it like it was just something to win a stupid bet over. And in that moment, it wasn't just the betrayal of the marriage, it was everything. I was looking at the man I'd called my husband, and I realized I had no idea who the hell he was. I couldn't breathe, my throat closed up, I wanted to scream, to hit something, but I couldn't even move. Why? I finally managed to get out. Why me? He shrugged, almost bored, like this was some mundane conversation about his work, not a confession about the deepest betrayal I could ever imagine. Why not? You were perfect, smart, beautiful, and I could make a bet. Everyone loves a challenge, right? And just like that, all the years of our marriage, the dinners, the late-night talks, the vacations we went on, all the inside jokes, suddenly felt like a show, like I had been playing some part in his sick little game, a game I never even knew I was in. I was a bet to you? His eyes flickered, like I'd just thrown a bucket of cold water on him. But then the smile came back, that same goddamn smile. Yeah, but don't worry, you won, you're stuck with me now. He said it like it was some twisted version of a victory, like I had somehow won something. I could feel my hands start to shake. You used me, I wasn't a prize to win. I gave you everything, Mark, everything, and you. I couldn't finish the sentence, because honestly, no words could explain the utter disgust I felt. Disgust at him, disgust at myself for not seeing it sooner. I had missed all the signs, the way he always seemed detached, like he was never really with me, even when we were together, the way he'd always make little jokes about our relationship, like it wasn't something serious, it wasn't love, it was a game to him, and in that moment, it felt like my entire world had crumbled. I wasn't just angry at him, I was angry at myself. How did I not see this? How did I not feel this? The truth, I guess, was that I was blind to it, to all of it. I didn't want to see the truth because it would shatter everything I'd built my life on. Are you really this heartless? I asked him, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer. Instead, he just looked at me, eyes cold, unfeeling, like I was nothing to him, and that was when I realized the truth. He'd never loved me, not really, not the way I thought, not the way I had loved him. I had been a game to him, a prize to win, and once he had me, he was done. No more effort, no more love, just emptiness. It wasn't just a betrayal of trust, it was a betrayal of who I thought I was. I had spent years building my life around him, around this image of us, two soulmates, perfect for each other, but in the end, all I was to him was a bet, a way to pass the time, and I realized, standing there, with him staring back at me like I was nothing more than a pawn, I wasn't stuck with him, he was stuck with me, because I was about to take back my life. But first, I needed to walk away, and the hardest part? The hardest part was realizing that I had been the one who stayed, I had been the one who ignored the signs, I had let him manipulate me, but that was over. It had to be. I can still hear it, that moment, the one where my whole world shifted, where something inside me broke free. I wish I could tell you it was an epiphany, a dramatic, grand realization that felt like fireworks and violins. But it wasn't like that, it wasn't clean or neat, it was messy, painful, and raw. He didn't even try to apologize, not once. He just sat there, like he was waiting for me to beg him to care. I guess I was supposed to keep pretending everything was fine, like we could somehow just sweep this under the rug and go on living in the dream we'd created. But I wasn't the woman I was a few weeks ago, the woman who believed that love could survive anything. And that's when I realized, this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some random slip-up, this was who Mark really was. A part of me wanted to scream, to throw something at him and demand answers, to tear him apart like he'd done to me, but honestly, at that point, I didn't even know what I was angry about anymore. Was I mad at him for betraying me? Or mad at myself for ever thinking I was safe? Mark, I started, voice shaking, but I couldn't finish. I wanted to scream, but my throat closed up. I felt something crack inside me, like a dam breaking, and all the confusion, the grief, the rage, just pouring out. But he just smiled. Yeah, you heard me right, he smiled. I thought maybe he was about to finally crack. Maybe he'd show some kind of remorse. But nope, instead, he leaned back in his chair, looking too comfortable in his own skin, like he was in control, like he had won, and then, he said it, I never thought I'd get this far, he said, like we were talking about a game or a bet. But now you're stuck with me. I remember the way the words hit me. It wasn't even the words themselves, but the way he said them, so casual, so cold, as if he was telling me the weather forecast. Stuck with me. It was like a punch to the gut. I could feel my whole body freeze, every muscle locking up. I wanted to get up, to run out the door, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like he had paralyzed me, not just physically, but mentally, too. I couldn't understand what had just happened. You think this is some kind of game? My voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. He shrugged, that arrogant smile never leaving his face. I mean, isn't it? I always told you that marriage is just a contract, right? The whole soulmate thing was your idea. His words echoed in my ears like some kind of sick joke. I wanted to scream, but there was this sickening part of me that just went numb. Is this really happening? And there it was, the moment I couldn't come back from. I could have kept fighting. Kept clawing at the remnants of what I thought we were, but I knew, deep down, that it wouldn't make a damn difference. Nothing was going to change, not him, not us. I was done. I didn't need to hear any more from him. I didn't need him to beg for forgiveness. The truth was in his eyes. He didn't care. He never had. And that's when I knew I wasn't going to beg him either. There were 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind, but they all hit at once. Was I stupid? How could I have been so blind for so long? All those years I spent thinking he was the one who would stand by me through thick and thin. How did I not see this? But it wasn't about me being stupid. It wasn't about missing the red flags, or being naive. I was just someone who believed in love, who wanted to believe in the good in people, and he took advantage of that. He used my love like it was some kind of game piece, to be moved around, discarded when it wasn't useful anymore. There were so many moments I could go back to, so many little lies and red flags that I'd chosen to ignore because I didn't want to face the truth. I couldn't face the truth, because then I'd have to admit that I had been wrong. I'd have to admit that I had built my whole life on something fake, and for a while, I let myself sit in that pain, like I deserved it, like I somehow asked for it. But not anymore. I wasn't going to beg him for something he was never going to give. I wasn't going to waste any more time being that woman, the one who thought she could fix things by holding on tighter, by loving more. That day, I let go. I had to let go, and as I stood up, something in me shifted. It was quiet at first, like a ripple across a calm lake. But it was real, and I felt it all the way down to my bones. I wasn't just walking away from Mark. I was walking away from a life that was built on a lie. I was walking away from who I thought I was. But the hardest part wasn't leaving him. It was leaving the idea of him, the idea of what we were, because that's what I had been holding on to all along. Not him, not the reality of what he was, but some fantasy I had in my head, the woman I thought I was, the woman who would stand by her man, the one who believed in forever. She was gone, and that broke me more than anything. But there was something else there, too. Something that had been buried for so long that I didn't even know it was there. A spark, a glimmer of something that told me I would be okay. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like flipping a switch and suddenly everything was fine. But it was the first step, the moment when I decided to stop living for someone else's approval, someone else's dream, and start living for myself. And that was when I knew there was no going back. I had crossed a line, and the truth was, it felt freeing. I wasn't sure who I was anymore, but at least I knew who I wasn't. I wasn't the woman who would keep loving someone who didn't love her back. I wasn't the woman who would keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I wasn't his. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally mine. And no matter how painful it was, no matter how much I had to let go of, I knew that it was the only way forward, the only way I could find me again. I won't lie to you. It was brutal, the first few months. I barely left my apartment. I just couldn't. Every time I tried to get out of bed, I felt like I was sinking deeper into some hole I couldn't crawl out of. It was like I was just existing, not really living, and all I could hear in my head was that one question, over and over. How could I have been so blind? The betrayal wasn't just about him, Mark. It wasn't just about the marriage that was built on a lie. It was about me. Who was I without him? Who was I if I wasn't his wife? What was I worth now? I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, not the way I used to, those quiet moments. When you're alone, and you're just trying to make sense of everything? I'd catch my reflection, and it felt like the person staring back at me wasn't even me, like I'd been replaced by someone else, someone weaker, someone foolish. But then, one morning, I woke up, and I guess I was tired of crying, so tired of it, and for the first time in a while, I didn't feel that burning ache in my chest. I felt empty, but in a way that didn't hurt. I'd had enough of the tears, of the self-pity, of the what-ifs. I remember this one day. I was sitting on my couch, staring out the window. It was raining, the kind of rain that makes everything feel heavy, and I was thinking about how much I hated the rain. It used to feel comforting, you know? But now it just felt depressing, and that's when it hit me. I was drowning in the grief of what he'd done, but I was still alive. I wasn't dead, I was still here. It was the tiniest shift, but that day? It was the day I chose to stop letting him keep me stuck in the past, and yeah, it felt almost impossible to move forward, but I realized the pain wasn't going to go away by me hiding from it. So, I started small. I remember getting up, pulling myself out of bed, and making a cup of coffee. It sounds so simple, right? But for the first time in months, it felt like an accomplishment. I made the decision to do one thing. Just one thing. That wasn't about him, not about us. It was just about me. I spent hours in that apartment doing nothing really, but it wasn't nothing. It was the beginning of my healing, of reclaiming me. I threw away the pictures of us, the ones where we were all smiles on some beach in Hawaii. I didn't want to look at them anymore. Those smiles felt fake now, and don't get me wrong, I loved those memories, but they weren't real anymore. They were a lie. I cried. Oh, I cried. I didn't cry just because of him. I cried because I felt stupid. I cried because I felt like I'd let my whole life be dictated by someone who never even cared. But more than that, I cried because I realized how deeply I had neglected myself. I had put everything into that marriage, into him, and somewhere along the way, I'd stopped paying attention to the one person who actually mattered, me. So I started doing things that made me feel something again, like baking. I hadn't baked in years. But one day I just decided to, and you know what? The first time I made cookies, they were awful. I burned them. But I laughed, and for the first time in months, I laughed at myself. It felt good, like I wasn't just stuck in this sea of grief. The thing is, I didn't just want to survive anymore. I wanted to live again. I wanted to stop being this version of myself who was constantly looking over her shoulder, haunted by his betrayal. It was like a constant echo in my head, a voice telling me that I wasn't enough, that I never would be, but I refused to keep letting that voice win. And so, slowly, piece by piece, I started putting myself back together. There were days when it was hard, and I mean really hard, when I'd wake up, and that familiar dread would fill my chest, and I'd want to crawl right back into bed and shut out the world. But then I'd remember the cookies, or a walk I'd taken by the lake, or the time I'd called Sophie, and we stayed on the phone for hours, talking about everything and nothing. I realized I hadn't just lost Mark. I'd lost a part of myself, the part of me that trusted blindly, the part of me that let someone else define my worth. But I was finding that part again. Healing wasn't something that happened overnight. It didn't come in a rush. It came in tiny little moments, a sip of coffee, a walk in the rain, a bad batch of cookies that made me laugh. And then one day, I looked in the mirror again, and this time, I didn't see the woman who had been fooled by a lie. I saw the woman who was slowly, painfully, but surely finding her strength again, the woman who wasn't afraid to let go of what no longer served her. I didn't need him to define me. I didn't need anyone to define me. But, honestly, it took a while before I could even begin to believe that. There were nights I still cried myself to sleep, nights where I'd think, maybe I wasn't enough, that maybe if I'd just been more, done more, that he wouldn't have strayed so far. But then I'd remind myself, this wasn't my fault. What I learned, through all of this, was that no one can make you feel worthless unless you let them. I had spent years letting someone else tell me who I was, what I was worth, and that was my mistake. But it wasn't too late. There was still time to learn how to be me again, and that was the first step in healing. There's something empowering about standing on the other side of betrayal, something freeing about realizing you're not just surviving it, but you're learning from it, growing from it. I wasn't the same person I was before the betrayal, but I wasn't that broken, shattered girl either. I was a new version of myself, one who was still figuring things out, still uncertain at times, but stronger, wiser, and, maybe for the first time in a long time, whole. I remember the first time I truly smiled again after everything had fallen apart. It wasn't the kind of smile you force just because you feel like you should. No, it was the kind that came from deep inside, like I was finally breathing after holding my breath for far too long. I didn't just move on, I leveled up. I remember standing in front of the mirror one day, staring at myself and thinking, I've survived this, and now? Now I'm going to thrive. The weeks after the breakup, I thought I was completely lost, completely. I'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, unsure of who I was anymore. Who was I without Mark? Who was I without the woman who had so deeply trusted someone who had broken her? I felt like I was piecing together a shattered version of myself that didn't even resemble the woman I used to be. I couldn't ignore the fact that I had let someone so completely control my world for so long, and worst of all, he'd done it for a bet, a game, a joke. I mean, how does someone just snap out of that? How do you go from being a confident corporate lawyer, someone who had it all together, to a woman who had to rebuild every little piece of herself? Honestly, it took time. It took me looking into the mirror and asking myself what I was truly worth, what was my value. And let me tell you something, I hated those moments. I hated the self-doubt, the shame, the confusion of it all. I hated how weak I felt, but the worst part? I hated that I let someone take my power. But here's the thing, I didn't just recover, I grew in ways I never thought possible. I took my career to new heights. I stepped up at work in a way that shocked everyone. My clients, my colleagues, even myself. I walked into meetings with my head held higher, my voice stronger. The woman who had let Mark take away her confidence became the woman who could crush a room full of CEOs and never flinch. I'm not saying it was easy, but damn, it felt good. I felt alive again. Every victory was a reminder that I was more than the lies I'd been fed. But it wasn't just my career that changed. Something shifted inside me too, something deeper. I started working with women who had gone through similar betrayals, and let me tell you, there's nothing more healing than helping others. The stories we shared, the pain, the tears, it all brought us closer together. It reminded me of what I was truly capable of. I wasn't just healing, I was growing. I was empowering myself through the very thing that had nearly destroyed me. And there's something so incredibly freeing about that, taking your pain and turning it into power. It's like taking a broken heart and turning it into something beautiful. Like turning a storm into a rainbow. And the best part of it all? I found peace, real peace, peace that wasn't dependent on Mark or anyone else, peace that I could hold on to all by myself. I found peace in my own company. I started going on solo trips, something I would have never done when I was with him. I found solace in reading, in writing, in spending hours curled up with a book I'd been too busy to read before. I started to love myself again, even more than I had before. That was the real victory, not just moving on, but embracing everything that came. With who I had become, I had made it through the darkest part of my life, and I was still standing, stronger, more confident, and yes, proud. Sometimes, I'll still get moments where the pain comes creeping back in, a random memory of Mark will hit me, and for a second, I'll feel that sting in my chest, but then I'll take a deep breath, remember how far I've come, and keep moving forward. I've learned that healing isn't linear. It doesn't happen in a perfect, straight line. It's messy. It's raw. It's painful, but if you keep walking, even when you don't think you can, you will get to the other side. And when you do, you'll realize that the person you've become is so much more powerful than the one you were before. So yeah, I didn't just move on from Mark, I leveled up, I took back what he had tried to strip away from me, and I found peace in a way I never thought possible. And I'll say this, there's no greater feeling than knowing you're in charge of your own story, that no matter what anyone else does, you can take what's broken and rebuild it into something new, something beautiful. Because the truth is, no one can take away your power unless you let them. So to anyone out there who's going through something similar, let me tell you this, it will get better, you will rise. And when you do, you'll look back at the hurt, at the heartache, and realize it was just fuel for the woman you were always meant to become. And she's unstoppable. So here's where it gets even crazier. After all of this, after everything that had happened, Mark wrote me. I know, right? After everything he'd done, after how much he'd torn my world apart, he had the audacity to send me a letter. He apologized, of course, said he was wrong, said that he'd been miserable without me. I couldn't even read it all the way through. The words were empty. I was the one who was miserable, remember? I was the one who had to rebuild my life from scratch. But you know what? It wasn't just his letter that hit me, it was the message I got a week later, out of nowhere. A woman who had dated him before me reached out. I swear, I could feel my heart stop. It felt like I was back in that pit of despair all over again, my stomach in knots, my mind racing. She told me everything. She'd been through the exact same thing. And the worst part? She wasn't the only one, there were others. Mark had done this to her, and every woman he'd ever dated. He made them believe in love, he manipulated them into thinking they were his everything, and then? Once they were hooked, once they were all in, he discarded them like trash. It was all a game to him, a bet. I couldn't believe it. I mean, how many of us had there been? And that's when it hit me, what I thought was a love story, what I thought was my worst heartbreak. That wasn't even the worst part of it. The worst part was that Mark was never capable of love in the first place. He was just playing a game to see how many women he could string along, to feel in control, to feel powerful. All this time, I thought it was me. I thought I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I had missed the signs. Maybe, somehow, I had been too naive. I even let myself feel guilty for not seeing it sooner. But now? Now, I see it all so clearly. Mark wasn't just some jerk who used me, no, he was a manipulator. He had a history of doing this, over and over again, and all the while, I was just another pawn in his sick little game, and you know what? I wasn't even mad at him anymore, not really, I mean, how could I be? He was never someone who knew how to love. His apology. It didn't even make a dent, because no matter how sorry he wasn't ever going to change. He was broken. He had been broken long before I came into his life, and he would stay broken. He was just pretending to be someone he wasn't, and that's on him. But here's the thing that no one tells you when you're drowning in heartbreak. That moment when you realize the person who hurt you is never going to be what you thought they were. It's actually freeing. It's like, suddenly, the weight of all that guilt, all that self-blame, disappears. You stop wondering if you did something wrong. You stop questioning whether or not you deserved it. You realize, you didn't, you never did. And that's the real kicker, the validation, the justice, because he was the problem. I don't need his apology. I didn't need him to see the light and come running back to me. What I needed to see was that I deserved better. I needed to see that I was worth more than a bet, more than someone's game. That letter, that final slap in the face from Mark, wasn't the ending. It was the beginning of something new. I've learned something now. I've learned that I don't need him. I never did. I'm the one who rebuilt myself. I'm the one who found my strength. And that's something he could never take away. I was always enough. It was just him who didn't know how to see that. So yeah, I don't know what happened to Mark after that. I don't care to know. Maybe he's still out there, manipulating other women, playing the same game, honestly. That's his problem now. He'll never change. But me? I've changed. I've leveled up, as I like to call it. I've learned that my worth doesn't come from someone else's validation. It comes from within. I've found peace in the chaos. I've found strength in the struggle. And I've realized that what was once my greatest heartbreak is now my greatest triumph. And for all the women out there who have been made to feel small, made to feel unworthy, let me tell you something. You are more than enough. You don't need anyone to complete you. You are whole, just as you are. You don't need their apology, their validation, or their love. You only need your own. And trust me, that's all you'll ever need. Because when you find your own power, nothing can break you. So to Mark, and to every man like him, thanks for the lesson, but I'm done now.